Yeah.
Mr. President, do you have any, three related questions. Do you have any accurate information on the number of Russian troops that have been removed from Cuba? Are you satisfied with the rate of troop removal? And was there in the Russian aid memoir any suggestion or provision for verification of troop removal?
No, and the answer to your question would really be no to all of them.
Mr. President, your policies in Europe seem to be encountering great difficulties, sir. And Cuba continues to be a problem. At home, unemployment is high. The school bill seems far off. There seems to be some more concern in the country for the budget deficit than for the tax cut. In view of all these things, there's some impression and talk in town and the country that your administration seems to have lost its momentum and to be slowing down and moving on to the defensive. I wonder if you could comment on this feeling.
Yes, I've read that, and I'm sure I think there is a rhythm to personal and national and international life, and it flows and ebbs, and I would say that we are still, we have a good many difficulties at home and abroad, and the Congress has not acted yet on the programs we've sent forward, so that we are still in the gestation period in those areas. Some of our difficulties in Europe have come because the military threat to Europe is less than it's been in the past. In other words, whatever successes we may have had in reducing that military threat to Europe have brought with it in its wake other problems. And that's quite natural and inevitable. I prefer these problems to the other problems. If you think that in the summer of '61, and of course this all may come again, we were calling up reserves, preparation for what might be a collision of major proportions between the Soviet Union and the United States and Berlin, I would say our present difficulties in Europe, while annoying in a sense or burdensome, are not nearly as dangerous as they were then. As far as Cuba, it continues to be a problem. On the other hand, there are advances in the solidarity of the hemisphere. I think we've made it clear that we will not permit Cuba to be an offensive military threat. I think that we're making some progress in other areas, so that if you asked me whether this was the winter of our discontent, I would say no. If you would ask me whether we're doing quite as well this winter as perhaps we were doing in the fall, I might say no, too. Yeah.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, the practice of managed news is attributed to your administration. Mr. Salinger says he's ever had it defined. Will you give us your definition and ask us why you find it necessary to practice it?
You are charging us with something, Miss Gray, and then you're asking me to define what it is you're charging me with. I think you might, let me just say that we've had very limited success in managing the news, if that's what we've been trying to do. And perhaps you tell us what it is that you object to in our treatment of the news.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Well, I don't believe in managed news at all. I thought we ought to get everything we want.
Well, I think you should too, Miss Gray. I'm for that.
President, this is a related question.
Yes, Miss Gray?
President, your speaking of historians induces me to ask you this. Most former presidents have put their official papers in libraries in their home states where they are not readily available to scholars and historians who come here to work with the Library of Congress and other agencies here. Have you decided where to put yours, and would you consider putting it in Washington?
Yes, I'm going to put it in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Mr. President, the Democratic platform in which you ran for election promises to work for equal rights for women, including equal pay, to wipe out job opportunity discriminations. Now, you have made efforts on behalf of others. What have you done for the women according to the promises of the platform?
Well, I'm sure we haven't done enough, and
must say I am a strong believer in equal pay for equal work, and I think that we ought to do better than we're doing, and I'm glad that you reminded me of it, Mr. President. Ms. Craig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, visitors who go out to visit Lincoln Park on East Capitol Street are dismayed to find it a slum. Congress has authorized, and the National Council of Negro Women will erect there a memorial stadium and a statue of the great woman educator, Mary Bethune. Now the transit company proposes to put an 8-lane freeway between the park and the Capitol, cutting it off. Could you inquire into that and see if the freeway could be put further out beyond the park?
Yes, I will.
President, do you think that Mrs. Murphy should have to take into her home a lodger whom she does not want, regardless of her reason, or would you accept a change in the Civil Rights Bill to accept small boarding houses like Mrs. Murphy?
The question would be, it seems to me, Miss Craig, whether Mrs. Murphy had a substantial impact on interstate commerce.
Let's face it, we fell for the Kennedys. The president simply seduced the press with elegant words and a natural wit.
It's been a long time since a president and his family have been subjected to such a heavy barrage of teasing and fun-poking and satire. Can you tell us whether you read and listen to these things and whether they produce annoyment or enjoyment?
Annoyment. No, they produce. Yes, I have read them and listened to them. Actually, I listened to Mr. Meader's record, but I thought it sounded more like Teddy than it did me. But so he's annoyed.
Would you save us a couple of hours' work tonight and explain what the Band-Aid is doing on your left hand?
Well, I cut my finger when I was cutting bread. Unbelievable as it may sound.
Former Vice President Nixon has been making a number of suggestions on American foreign policy recently. In doing so, do you think he's sounding like a would-be presidential candidate again?
No, I've taken him at his word that he won't run again.
I wonder if you could tell us whether, if you had it to do over again, you would work for the presidency, and whether you can recommend the job to others.
Well, the answer is, the first is yes, and the second is no. I don't recommend it to others. At least for a while.
Someday, someone may separate John Kennedy's wit from his wisdom, his style from his use of power. What his generation remembers is the mixture.
Here inside the Armory, the once very junior senator from Massachusetts, now at the age of 43, the president-elect of the United States, and his wife Jacqueline go strolling down the aisle, heading to the rostrum while he receives one of the rarest of tributes, a standing ovation from newsmen. A very, very unusual thing indeed. It should be noted, too, that there are local enthusiasts from Hyannis who have somehow made their way into this armory, and they are contributing mightily to the applause. Kennedy, with his typical amazing physical ability to bounce back, looks rested. His eyes are a trifle bloodshot, but aside from that, you'd never guess that he's been through a grueling campaign and had been up most of the night following the election returns. We believe we're going to get a brief formal statement and then possibly answers to questions. The President-elect of the United States. She's all right. She's all right, right here.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I will ask.
ladies and gentlemen, I've received the following wire from Vice President Nixon. In that wire he says, Senator John F. Kennedy, Hyannisport, Massachusetts, I want to repeat through this wire the congratulations and best wishes I extended to you on television last night. I know that you will have the united support of all Americans as you lead the nation in the cause of peace and freedom during the next 4 years. In reply to the Vice President, I sent him the following wire. Vice President Nixon, Los Angeles, California. Your sincere good wishes are gratefully accepted. You are to be congratulated on a fine race. I know that the nation can continue to count on your unswerving loyalty in whatever effort you undertake, and that you and I can maintain our long-standing cordial relations in the years ahead. Sincerely, John Kennedy. I received also a wire from President Eisenhower which says, my congratulations to you for the victory you have just won at the polls. I will be sending you promptly a more comprehensive telegram suggesting certain measures that may commend themselves to you as you prepare to take over next January the responsibilities of the presidency, signed Dwight D. Eisenhower. And I have sent to President Eisenhower the following wire. I am grateful for your wire and good wishes. I look forward to working with you in the near future. The whole country is hopeful that your long experience in the service of your country can be drawn upon further in the years to come. With every good wish, signed, John Kennedy. Jackie, I guess we have one more statement. May I say, in addition to all citizens of this country, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, regardless of how they may have voted, that it is a satisfying moment to me, and I want to express my appreciation to all of them and to Mr. Nixon personally. I particularly want to thank all those who worked so long and so hard in this campaign on our behalf and who were generous to me in my visits throughout the country and who were generous enough to support me in the election on yesterday. To all Americans, I say that the next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all. The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead to move this country safely through the 1960s. I ask your help in this effort, and I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States and to the cause of freedom around the world. So now my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
For the first time in this reporter's knowledge, in the months and months that I've covered him, I noticed for the first time some real emotion in the president-elect. A glint of tears in his eyes, and his voice cracked once or twice. The president-elect is surrounded by many members of his family. His sisters Eunice and Pat and Jean. His brother Robert Kennedy, who is also his campaign manager. That's Robert Kennedy on the far left. And, of course, Father Joseph Kennedy,
the one-time ambassador to the court of St. James. Next to him was Teddy, the youngest of the Kennedy boys, right there in the center of your screen. He's 28 years old and was the senator's far western campaign manager. And after that is the mother, Rose Kennedy. And then the rest of the Kennedy girls, Pat Lawford, and Robert's wife, Ethel. And now the president-elect is making his way from the stage. So for John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the long campaign comes to an end, and a successful one for him, despite the fact that the popular vote was a very, very narrow affair. Actually, Senator Kennedy decided to make the supreme bid for the nation's highest office for his party's nomination just a few weeks after he failed by a whisker to get his party's vice presidential nomination in 1956. What followed was almost 4 years of continuous campaigning, crisscrossing the nation, going from state to state, talking to delegates, going back time and again to make sure that these delegates stayed with him. The rest of the story, of course, is history. His first ballot nomination in Los Angeles in July. And then since then, the slam bang campaign against Vice President Nixon, which ended about an hour ago when the Vice President publicly and formally conceded defeat. As he heads back to the compound, can look forward to at least 2 or 3 days of complete rest, complete relaxation. For Kennedy, it's been non-stop now for 7 months, first through the grueling primaries, then the convention, then the campaign itself. And at the end of the road, at the rainbow, was that pot of gold for him, which was the White House.